Saints fans and Who-Dats from all over the world. It's time for the Bayou Blitz. With your host, Bob Rose.
Good evening, New Orleans Saints fans, fans of the Bayou Blitz, fans of the NFL, and fans of the New Orleans Saints everywhere. I am Bob Rose of the Bayou Blitz, and we thank you for having us into your homes again on a Wednesday night. I am joined, as always, by my partner, one of my mentors, and a very good friend, Mr. Kyle Mosley. How are you tonight, Kyle?
I'm doing fine. And Who-Dats, if you need a little bit of therapy, just give us a call. We take black cards, gold cards, platinum cards, anything you can. Just come on over, and we will solve all your Who-Dat woes.
Well, indeed, and I know most of Who-Dat Nation is still we're still licking our wounds from, let's call it what it was, a little bit of a beatdown that our division rivals Tampa Bay Buccaneers gave to us this past Sunday. And extremely disappointing and equally shocking 48-40 defeat. But this week is another week. As our friend Tyrone Hughes said on the show last week, look, these players are businessmen too, and this is what they do, folks. They're going to learn from this. As Cam Jordan said immediately after the game, they will improve, and I guarantee you they're going to learn from this and get back to work. But as far as our podcast therapy goes tonight, we have a great treat for you and somebody that can attest to how quickly you need to recover from losses. Former Saints great wide receiver, turned stuntman, turned author, Mr. Quinn Early. How are you tonight, Quinn?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. And I love that intro, by the way. I was definitely over here bobbing my head.
Well, good, Quinn, man. It's great to have you on the Bayou Blitz, man. And it's an honor because I've seen you play.
Thank you for having me.
No problem.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, you were one of my favorite receivers to watch through the early and mid '90s. You could go deep. You could take a short route and find the seam and take it to the house. Our friend and your former quarterback, actually, Jim Everett, was on our show about a month or so ago. I bet he had to love throwing to you. You two made a hell of a combination.
Oh, he was good. Yeah, I actually talked to Jim last week. We reminisced a little bit, and we were laughing. Boy, we sure had a good time during those years. And I got to tell you that I absolutely loved playing for that organization. And it's the best time of my career. And, I'm honored that you guys are having me on tonight.
Oh, anytime. And hopefully we're going to have you on again as often as you'd like in the future. One thing I want to ask you, though, before we get started, like we mentioned, we had, one of your other former teammates, Tyrone Hughes, on with us last week. We had to ask him. So I'm going to pose the same question to you and get it from an offensive perspective. You played a very unique part in Saints history because when you first came to New Orleans in '91, they were still a defensive-oriented team with the stars on that dome patrol linebacking core, a somewhat conservative offensive approach. And then during your time in New Orleans, it kind of morphed into a more of an air it out, especially when Jim came into the fold and things like that. But they got a little bit weaker defensively. Now, Quinn, at any point in time, was there any disharmony between any of the offensive and defensive players?
Not at all. I think when you win, that's the bottom line in that league. And, during those couple of years with Dome Patrol and everything, we won a lot. So I think as the offense, we realized where the money was made, and that was with the defense first. So we just tried to take care of the ball, put points on the board, and it generally worked out for us. And I think that because we won, there wasn't really any disharmony.
That makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. You still, you talked a little bit about it before we went on the air too, and you just mentioned Jim. You still keep in touch with a lot of your former teammates?
Not a lot. I talk to Torrance Small every now and then. There's a couple of guys that I message with, and that's really about it. We run into each other at functions from time to time, but it's always great to see those guys when I get to see them. But for me, I'm into so much other stuff now that it's really hard to keep up with my former teammates. I don't go to a lot of the NFL functions, so. But I definitely have a few guys that I stay in touch with.
And you mentioned how busy your life has been after football as well. And I mean, God, where do we start? Before we talk about the Saints of today and what you see out of that team, I'd like to hear a little bit about what's going on with you. I know you were a stuntman and an actor on a couple TV series and movies, and you have a book coming out, or has it already been released? Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so I'll start with the movie stuff. So back about 9 years ago, one of my good friends from college did really well in business and became a movie producer. That was his passion. So he calls me and he says, "Hey, making a movie. Why don't you come out this weekend and be in it?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, I have nothing going on. I'll come out and try it." So I go to New Orleans. I actually was being filmed in New Orleans. I fly to New Orleans. Next thing I know, I'm hanging out the back of a truck shooting a machine gun. And then they paid me for it. And I was like, "Are you serious?" And so I became friends with the stunt coordinator. And I asked him, "How do I do this for real?" And he pretty much gave me the blueprint and said, "You need to go hustle. These are the things you need to do." And so I followed that to the letter, and 9 years later, I'm working quite a bit, and I feel very fortunate in it. I've had the pleasure to double people like Lawrence Fishburne. I doubled Will Smith on the movie Bright that was out on Netflix. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And currently I double Shamar Moore on the TV show SWAT on CBS. So I've done quite a bit, and it's a lot of fun. I'll tell you what's pretty cool is that my oldest son, Cameron, is also a stuntman, and I get to work with him from time to time. So that's the best part. That's a lot of fun.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So, and as far as my book goes, so my mother wrote this amazing book, and it's about a man named Sherrod Bryant. It's about his life and times. And Sherrod Bryant was a free man of color during the time of slavery in the antebellum South. So it was pre-Civil War. And what he did was he sold himself into indentured servitude, and then he went on to become one of the wealthiest landowners of the time. And he built a multiracial community for people to live. And this is a true story. And he was actually my great-grandfather 7 generations back.
Really? Wow.
Now, you can Google him. There's all kinds of stuff on the web about him. But my mom, my great-grandmother, Big Mama, would tell my mom these stories when she was a little girl. And she promised Big Mama that she would write this book. So my mom did years and years of research. She went back to Tennessee, visited with family members, went to the archives, did all this research, and she wrote this amazing book. But unfortunately, my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2008. And in 2013, she passed away from complications from the disease. But before she passed away, she asked me to please have her book published. So it's really exciting because I finally did that, and I had the book published. And it's for sale now. You could go to BryantAcres.com and order the book, or you can get it on Amazon.com. And it's, there's a paperback, and it's also on Kindle. And it's just really an honor for me to have done that for her. And the proceeds are going to go to Alzheimer's research and the Alzheimer's Association. So I'm going to give back to the disease that ultimately took my mom's life. So I'm really excited about it. It's the book's out now, and it's going really well.
Wow, man, that's
congratulations!
Awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Quinn, you and I have something in common. Alzheimer's claimed my mother's life back in 2010.
Oh,
yeah,
man, I'm sorry.
And my uncle's life a couple of years ago. So her brother, which was her brother. So. Yeah, and so I'll be praying for you. I'm checking out the website as we speak. But look, man, I was right there raising money. I still raise money for the Alzheimer's walk every year. So I applaud what you guys are doing, and I can't wait to be able to order the book.
Thank you. And, I'll tell you, we need to get together probably once we get off air and talk about it. Maybe there's some things we can do together.
Definitely.
It's amazing. in doing this, I've been doing a lot of marketing. I've been, I'm on Facebook with it and just trying to basically get the word out there to people. And my big thing is to advocate for the caregivers, people who are going through it, because, and I'm sure that you can, feel what I'm saying, or you probably went through the same thing. But when my mom was diagnosed, I had no idea what to do. It was almost like somebody gave me a cinder block, put a cinder block in my arms and pushed me in the river.
Right.
I was like, now what am I supposed to do? And, but what I've learned is there's lots of resources out there. So my passion is to try to advocate for people who are going through this, and what people don't realize is, there's almost 6 million Americans suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia right now. And 1 in 3 elderly people will die with Alzheimer's or dementia. So it's an epidemic, and it's amazing how many people, when I talk about it, they say, well, my mom, my dad, my uncle, a lot of people are touched by this disease. So,
right.
And
you know what else?
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Quinn. What also a lot of people do not understand, because my mom was a teacher, and she taught for 40 years, vibrant personality, loving, gregarious, and just one day it just started hitting her. We didn't know what it was, and then my wife and I, we took her to her doctor. I kept on telling her doctor, something's wrong, something's not right. And then we finally got the diagnosis, man, and it was crushing. I can still remember that day when we had to take her car keys away from her. So, yeah, I understand. And it's really hard on the caregivers. So you're right. And we could talk more about it, but it is really difficult for caregivers.
Absolutely. So I've also just started a foundation, a nonprofit organization, and I've teamed with a doctor, Dr. John Seelig. He's here in California, and he's a retired neurosurgeon, and we put a really good team together. And we're going to focus on raising money for research for Alzheimer's, dementia, CTE, right? Because there's a lot of, retired NFL guys that are going through some things, and, traumatic brain injury. So I'm really excited about the whole process and the whole thing. And, I'm really proud to, get my mom's book out there and help raise money for this and try to do something. I think there are some things that can be done to at least slow the disease down, and hopefully one day just get rid of it altogether.
Yeah. Let's fight for that cure.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Well, and Quinn, Kyle, I'm certainly sorry for both of your losses, and many of us, even if we're not affected, as caregivers or family members by someone that has Alzheimer's, it is certainly sad. When any of your relatives even get the onset of dementia, even if it is in the diagnosed case of Alzheimer's. So you hit the nail on the head, Quinn. It affects not only the individual that suffers from it, but it trickles down through the family members and close friends as well.
Absolutely.
And folks, if you didn't have a chance to write down, to jot down Quinn's information on how to order the book, or the foundations that he's involved in, obviously you can go back and listen to our show, via replay, or the links are also available. Quinn posted on his page, on his Facebook and Twitter pages a lot. And Quinn, we'd be honored if you post those kind of things to our Bayou Blitz Facebook group as well. I know you're involved in that also.
Absolutely.
Kyle and I will continue to post links also.
Awesome. And then also, so Kyle, I'm going to be out there, you guys, in November, that first week in November. I'm going to go to the November 4th game, I believe, and I've already talked to the Alzheimer's Association people there, and so I'm going to try to do some things in New Orleans. That's my second home. I try to get there as much as possible, and I'm going to see if I can't raise some money there in New Orleans. So I'll be there in November, and we can talk more about that also.
Oh,
that's
awesome.
Terrific, and awesome. I obviously, like I said, if there's anything that we can do throughout the pages, you're certainly a member of the family, as you know. So, post, link, ask questions, and let people know how they can help too, because I think we have a very helpful New Orleans Saints family nation here.
Absolutely, best fans on the planet, bar none.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what else, Quinn? I'm just going to say this, man. One thing that is going to help a lot of fans and a lot of people in the Who Dat Nation is to know that we keep supporting one another and supporting organizations as the Alzheimer's Association is very crucial and critical for people and families to know the support is out there, because not enough education is going around, even though this disease is running rampant in every community, in every facet of America.
Yeah, but it doesn't discriminate.
It does not.
And, you know, I think the stigma has always been, you know, to keep it quiet, to kind of recoil from society and not say anything. You know, my mom has Alzheimer's, but we're just going to act like it doesn't exist. You know, there's so many resources now. And I'm going to tell you what's great. I know he wouldn't mind me saying this, but I'm good friends with Ed White. Ed White played for the San Diego Chargers back in the Air Coryell days, you know, with Charlie Joyner and Dan Fouts and those guys. He played guard. And he played for 17 years in the NFL, and he was just diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Oh, wow. And he came to my book launch, which was last Saturday, and we sat down for a long time and we talked. And he is very open about it, and he's upfront with it, and he talks about diet. So we're going to be doing some things. And then I have a podcast, which I'll be starting very soon. I'll also post that on Bayou Blitz. It's going to be the Quinn Early Show, and you know, we're going to talk about all of these things. You know, we'll talk about obviously my career, football, you know, stunts, acting, things like that, but also, you know, advocating for Alzheimer's and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Awesome. Just let us know whatever we can do to help you guys out. Okay.
Okay. I sure appreciate it.
Quinn, did you have a chance? Not that I want to shift gears here, but did you have a chance to watch the Saints-Bucks game this past Sunday?
I did. I always watch, and I'll tell you, a lot of offense. It was a track meet, is what I call it. You know, and that. But you know, it was a hard loss. But I like to always keep it in perspective. You know, that's the first week, and a lot of people like to write off teams after the first or second week of the season. But I think the Saints are going to be a good team this year. I think that they got some good players, and they had a slip the first game, but I think that they can get it going. They'll get on track, especially this week. They play the Browns, correct?
Right.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, so I think they can get on track against them and get this thing going.
Oh, tell us, from your perspective as a receiver, what made Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans so successful against, primarily Marshawn Lattimore and Ken Crawley in coverage? Because it looked like they were just running free through that New Orleans secondary all day long. What did you see from that aspect?
Well, I think, and I saw this. I watched a few games on Sunday, and I saw this with a few teams. And what I think is, nowadays in the preseason, a lot of teams are resting their guys. Now, I'm not sure how much the Saints rested their starters. I didn't really keep track of that, but I know that a lot of teams are resting their guys because in the preseason, you end up losing players. I remember when I played, I hated those preseason games because I just wanted to be healthy for the season. And, nowadays they don't play those guys that much. So a lot of teams are looking rusty. It's almost like the month of September is their preseason. Mm-hmm. Now you got to get in shape and get ready to go and dial it up pretty quick here. But I would say it was more that than anything else. And I think that, as a pro, those guys won't let that happen again. I remember having a bad game, but I never had two bad games in a row. So I think those guys are going to turn it around this week, and I think they're going to do much better this week.
Well, most of Saints Nation will be relieved to hear that for sure. Now, and I wrote about it today a little bit, and earlier this week when I did a quick game recap. I had mentioned that I thought that the New Orleans defense looked like they came out on their heels a little bit, especially on the outside boundaries with Lattimore and Crawley. who seemed to have greater success last year when they played more of a man-on-man coverage and in-your-face style, particularly Lattimore. Did you see some off coverage, some more off coverage from Lattimore and Crawley than what you expected, or did I kind of read that wrong?
No, I think they did. I think that, again, the first game, they have a game plan, and it's not – I don't believe that it's the players that decide, okay, I'm going to play off coverage. I think that comes from the defensive coordinator. So they just did what they were told, and it just didn't work out for them. So I think they'll adjust, and I think it'll be better this week. And I think we'll get a better picture after those first maybe 3 games. You'll know, what we have going on here. But I think they'll adjust this week for sure.
Now, as a receiver, I got to ask you, what makes Michael Thomas so good? What do you see from him, or as a receiver yourself? Tell us what an elite receiver does see. What makes him so darn good?
I think, first of all, that he's beyond his years. It's almost like he's been playing for 7 or 8, 9 years, and he's just a seasoned wide receiver. The difference is a lot of guys nowadays rely on their speed, and they're just going to try to beat somebody. But there are a lot of little things, little nuances to doing well in this league, and it starts with your preparation. Like what I always did was I wasn't the fastest, I wasn't the biggest, but I worked harder than everybody else. So when I'd go out to practice, I would always say to myself, I'm going to have the best practice I ever had. And I also, deep in the back of my mind, I had, if they keep one wide receiver on this team, it's going to be me. And I always approached the game that way. And I spent a lot of time in film study. So I think he has those things, and he has the intangibles just to really get open and make plays. And he's just a quality player. It's fun to watch him.
You played with some terrific quarterbacks. I know you played a couple of years, a year or two with Bobby Hebert, obviously Jim Everett that we mentioned. And I think after you left New Orleans and went to Buffalo, I think you even got in with Jim Kelly for a year or two. Tell us how important it is to build a rapport with your quarterback, regardless of his level of elitism. Is that overblown, or is that pretty vital?
No, I think it is vital for sure. And with me, the problem I had was, starting with the Chargers, I had 4 or 5 different quarterbacks. Then when I went to the Saints, I had Hebert, and then Wade Wilson played there for a year, and then I had Jim Everett. Then when I went to Buffalo, same thing. I had 3 or 4 different quarterbacks. And then my final year, I played for the Jets. Then Testaverde gets hurt, and then it was a quarterback carousel. So I probably played with 17, 18 quarterbacks in my 12-year career. So it was really hard for me to get a rapport. You have like a Jim Kelly and an Andre Reed, or a Marvin Harrison and a Peyton Manning, guys like that who play with one another year after year. They just know each other. It's almost like they're like a husband and wife team. Like they just know exactly where each other are and what each other are going to do at all times. So I did have a little bit of that with Jim Everett. We actually were talking the other day, and I said, man, if we could have played our whole career together, that would have been amazing. But it's definitely an important thing to have a rapport with your quarterback, for sure.
Now, you were obviously a rookie receiver at one point, and you were highly regarded one at that. San Diego took you out of the second round, I believe, when you came out of college from Iowa.
Right.
Kind of a similar position to what we see Saquon Smith in. New Orleans took him with their 3rd round pick.
Yep.
And he looked like a potential star throughout preseason, all the physical skills, et cetera, et cetera. Yet I think we only saw him on the field for 12 or 14 snaps on Sunday, and he didn't record a catch. Is that pretty common? Do you expect ups and downs out of a rookie wideout from your position?
Yeah, I think so. You're just feeling your way. It's a new league, and it varies. You have some guys who come in and they're just instant stars. You have other guys that it takes a few years. With me, I had a pretty good rookie season. My second year, I got hurt. My third year, they didn't really want me around too much. So that's when which was great for me because I ended up in New Orleans. But it took me a few years to really find my niche. Even, my first couple of years with the Saints, Bobby liked to throw to Eric Martin, which naturally, the guy was a fantastic wide receiver, and we did have a conservative offense. My job was to clear out. So my first 2 years there, I think I only caught 31, 32 balls. And then as I got into my third year, and then really my fourth and fifth years, now I'm catching 80 some odd balls a year. And everybody just talked about how much better I've become. But it was really, like we had talked about before, having that rapport with the quarterback. When Jim Everett came, they at first were game planning to get the ball to Michael Haynes a lot. And Jim liked the way I ran my routes. He liked my work ethic, things like that. And he looked at me and he said, "Don't worry about it. We're going to get you the football." And then he started giving me the ball. Then they started to game plan for me. So sometimes it's a combination of things. Chris Carter, I saw an interview with Chris Carter, and one thing he said that I really agreed with. He said that in the NFL, a lot of times as a wide receiver, it's a scheme thing. If a coordinator says we got to get this player the ball, we really want to feature this player, because everybody in that league is talented. Everybody was fast. Everybody can jump. Everybody was the best player to ever come out of their high school, or college. So a lot of times it's the scheme too. So it's scheme. It's the quarterback that you play with. It's the quarterback having confidence in you, and then your confidence grows, and then you just make plays. So it's a combination, I think, of all those things.
Who was the best cornerback you ever played against during your career?
Corner?
Yeah.
I would say Eric Allen. Eric Allen played for the Philadelphia Eagles for a lot of years, was my teammate in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. And the thing I liked about Eric wasn't the biggest guy. He wasn't the fastest guy, but Eric could cover. And what he did was he actually lives here in San Diego. And actually, I spent the last 10 years coaching high school football here in San Diego at Cathedral Catholic High School, and he had two sons come through there. So we spent a lot of time talking. And he, like me on the offensive side of the ball, he spent a lot of time in the film room. And he would pick up people's tendencies. And he knew that if you had that wide split, you were running a quick slant. And he knew that if you took that outside stem at 15 yards, you were going to run a comeback. And he just knew all those things. So he was a really good technician. He was a student of the game, and I would have to say that he was the best corner I played against.
Wow. Kyle, I feel like I interrupted you a couple minutes ago. I apologize.
Oh, no, man. I'm just listening to Quinn. Quinn, I know Eric Allen, great. I think Eric is so underrated for what he's done over the years.
Absolutely.
You talked about schemes, and one thing I noticed, Bob and Quinn, is that Traquan did not get targeted. That's bottom line.
Right.
And if he's not targeted, there's no way he can be able to be effective. Austin Carr had more snaps than he did. And I noticed over the past the final two preseason games, Bob, and I think we kind of mentioned this, Austin Carr was getting more noticed for his abilities, and Sean Payton took note of how well he was doing in the slot, and every ball that was coming to him almost he was catching. So kudos to him. But Traquan Smith was also catching footballs as well. So that's why I was kind of taken aback that he did not get more passes thrown to him, right? Especially it was a track meet and we had to have more down the field presence. But on the flip side, where was Craig Robertson the entire game? They did not have him on the field at all. And we're talking really, in my opinion, either the best or second best linebacker that we have on the squad. So what was going on with the scheming on the defensive side as well? And Quinn, you brought up something very important, and Bob as well. I noticed how those guys were playing more zone the first part of that game as well, the defensive backs. So I don't know if they just got out-coached, in my opinion, that first half especially. They just got out-coached.
again, like you just said, it's all about, the coaches get together as a staff and they look at a lot of film and a lot of tendencies and a lot of statistics with regards to the upcoming team. Then they come up with their plan. So the defensive coaching staff came up with that plan for, the defense. And was that the best plan? I don't know. Obviously, probably it wasn't, because they lost the game and they get a lot of points scored on them, right? So, but again, they're professionals. Maybe they got out coached. I think they'll adjust that. As far as the players, when they're playing, that there could be a lot of things. I don't know. Maybe he's late to meetings. Maybe he's just not getting it done in practice. It's a lot more than just the games. It's all week. And the thing about that league is the big eye in the sky doesn't lie, is what they used to say about it. What that means is the coaches are always watching film. They watch you on running plays, passing plays. They watch your drops. They watch how you fill the hole. They watch how you run your routes. I mean, they watch everything. And if you're just not getting it done in practice, they get nervous about putting you in the game. So it's not just Sunday. It's all about your preparation. It's all about practice on a day-to-day basis and being great in practice, which translates to the game. Now, let me talk a little bit, let's go back to the scheme a little bit. I remember, again, when I was playing my first 2 years in New Orleans, and they had me running clear routes because I was pretty fast. I was running go routes all the time. And there were times when I'd be down in the end zone doing jumping jacks, and they wouldn't throw the ball. Bobby would take a look, and I'm not downing Bobby. Bobby was a great quarterback. He'd take a look, and then he'd dump it to Dalton Hilliard, and Dalton Hilliard would get 20 yards, which was great. But there were times when, and then people would say, well, how come Quinn only caught 32 passes this season? And I would tell people that I had 2 passes thrown to me a game, and I had to make sure that I caught both of those passes, because if I didn't, then I was only going to have 16 catches at the end of the season. So again, there's only one football, and it is all about scheme. Now, once they decided, in those 2 great years I had in 94 and 95, they decided to make me the primary guy. And there were times, I'm going to tell you guys a secret. There were times when Jim would come to the sideline in the fourth quarter. There'd be 5 minutes left in the game, and he'd say, Quinn, how many passes you have? I'd say 2. He'd go, okay, I got you. And then the next series, he'd throw me like 5 balls. And then at the end of the game, he'd go, how many catches you have? I go, 7. And then he'd give me a little high five. So I used to love him for that. But yeah, so it's all about scheme. It's all about game plan. And again, I'm not going to panic. I think that they're going to do better this week. And it's just it's a long season. The race doesn't always go to the swiftest, right? It's a marathon. So
right.
I think they'll get back on track this week.
I do have a question.
You hear that, Saints fans? This is coming from one of our own. So let's back away from those bridge ledges. They'll be okay.
Yeah.
No jumping off the Crescent City connection, guys. Please.
Don't do that.
Quinn, the Cleveland Browns are coming to town this Sunday, as you mentioned, and they have 2 extremely talented wideouts in Josh Gordon and especially Jarvis Landry. Landry has been more productive throughout his career, mainly because Gordon, of course, has had some well-documented disciplinary problems, but, of course, he's available to play now. If you were the Saints defensive coordinator, if you were Dennis Allen, Saints defensive coordinator, how would you approach these 2 guys, especially after the success that Evans and Deshaun Jackson had against your secondary the previous week?
Well, I will tell you the hardest coverage I had time with was a 2-man is what they call it. So it's basically that cover 2, which the corners usually will play that flat zone. They'll try to jam you inside and play that flat zone. Then you have 2 deep safeties on each hash mark. But when you play 2-man, now what that is those corners have you as their assignment. So they'll mirror you and follow you up the field, and you have those 2 safeties back there. So that's an extremely hard coverage to get open. It doesn't matter, how good of a player you are at wide receiver, because now you have to release inside, and you have to beat the defense on those short inside hook routes and inside crossing routes. To me, that's a defense that you put on two receivers like those guys from the Browns.
Interesting. Now, yeah, and you mentioned the safeties too, and we have yet to touch on them. But Kyle and I mentioned Von Bell's struggles on our halftime show with Brendan Boylan this past Sunday, and then I jumped on that a little bit more in my post game recap on Monday morning. Marcus Williams was slow getting over the top on a couple of those deeper routes to Jackson and Evans, but we know he's going to be just fine. It looked to me like Von Bell looked completely lost in coverage. What did you see out of Vaughn? And we didn't see a lot of them in the second half actually because they reduced his snaps and brought Kurt Coleman in. But did you see the same kind of struggles out of Vaughn? And if so, why do you think that was?
Well, it's hard to say. I will say that he's a young player. This is only his fourth year. Mm-hmm. So again, sometimes you have a slow start, and I still go back to the fact that a lot of those guys didn't play a lot in the preseason, but I think that he'll get back on track this week. But he's a quality player. He's done some good things, and I think that they'll pick it up, and the coaches are going to get those guys right. It's a good coaching staff, and I think they're going to get it right. They're going to get them right.
Kyle, I think I interrupted you again.
No, you're fine. And look, Quinn, back in your day, you guys had 2 days, right, for practice. Yeah. These guys have a very modified schedule. So
if the rules were like they are now, I might still be playing.
We're hearing that a lot.
Of course, I'm kidding. Listen, of course I'm kidding. I could probably play if you put some flags on me and put me on third and 4, and I just got to the 5, got those 5 yards and got out of bounds. I could probably play, but I hear what you're saying. It's definitely different now.
Well, and I heard from another commentator talking about the lack of communication and Sean Payton also alluded to maybe these guys were not effectively amongst one another in the defensive backfield. And I remember, was it 2 years ago, Kenny Vaccaro said that was one of the major problems they were having when they were having one of the worst defensive performance in NFL history, right? So
right.
My question is, what happens in practice? Do they not work on communication, or is it just because the game is different, they just lose the understanding how to communicate with one another? What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm not a defensive player, but I do know, I played a lot of years of football, and in listening to the defensive coaches and in listening to, a lot of the older, more experienced defensive players, it's imperative and very important for the defense to communicate. Passing guys off, if a guy's running a route and all of a sudden he comes in, those types of things, or, watch the crack, or, things like that. So those are things, again, that start in the film room, and it's really important for a defense to communicate. And I'm not sure if those guys are doing that or not, but I do know that it's a very vital part of preparing for an offense.
What do you, Cameron Meredith, who was signed by the Saints as a free agent wide receiver from the Bears this offseason, he was inactive for the Buccaneers game and very limited during the preseason. Of course, he's coming back from that major ACL injury that cost him 2 misses last season with the Bears. When you were able to watch the Saints in the preseason, and I think Meredith even missed the first 2 games completely, did you notice that he was a little bit slow getting off the ball? Does he still look like he's not fully recovered from that knee injury physically, or do you think it's more mental?
Well, I don't, excuse me, I really didn't notice, how he was coming off the ball. I really didn't zone in on him, and I didn't even realize that he was hurt. But I do know, that he's the guy that, still a young player. He's only 25. He's got a few years of experience, out of Illinois State, but he's definitely a quality guy. Listen, if you're playing in this league, there's something about you. There's a lot of guys that aren't playing that are really great players. So, I think that, they have him for a reason, and we'll just have to see. We'll have to see how he does,
Do you think the Saints really missed Mark Ingram in the running game or on Sunday, or do you think it was just a matter of an aggressive pass-happy game plan early, and then they just fell behind and had to throw the ball?
Yeah, I think that's what happened. I think that the Bucs put up so many points that they were playing catch-up all game, but that's a quality backfield. Kamara, enough said about him. They got who do they got? They got Gilsley,
and Jonathan Williams.
Jonathan Williams, yeah. So that's a quality backfield. So they're going to be fine there. I just think, like you said, they just had to play catch up.
How do you see the Saints offensively coming out against Cleveland? And we mentioned we saw how aggressive they came out throwing the ball against Tampa. Do you expect a little bit different approach in this Sunday's game against the Browns?
I think they'll do what they do. I think Drew is such a great quarterback and leader. I think he'll get all those guys right. They'll rally around him. They're going to pass the ball like they do. They'll put up big numbers, especially this week and throughout the season. But I think they'll be more balanced. They'll get that running game going. And then I think they put up 40 points last week. And then it's just a matter of getting the defense to stop people and let the offense do their thing. I think if they can do that and, do well on offense and stop people on defense, I think it'll be hard to stop them this year.
That's the thing, because you look at the offense, and they had a couple of mishaps on offense with the fumbles, with Gillislee fumbling as well as with Thomas fumbling, and they still were able to put up 40 points. I'm not concerned so much about the offense, right? And think about this. If they really crank it out when Mark Ingram comes back, wow. It's still scary.
Absolutely.
It's still scary.
Absolutely.
Right?
Listen, and start. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm listening. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think, defensively, it's always going to start with, the defensive line. They can put pressure on the quarterback and, those linebackers, the ends getting around there and getting some sacks and things like that. And that takes pressure off, some of the defensive backs. The thing about the dome patrol back in the day, you had Ronaldo Turnbull, rushing off the end. You had Ricky Jackson, all those guys. I can name everybody, but they were in the quarterback's face right at the snap of the ball. And that made the secondary. The secondary, there were a bunch of good guys, but it really made them look like all-stars because the quarterback could never get the ball off. So I think it starts with, up front. And if they can stop people, like you said, the offense is going to put up points. Drew does a really good job of reading that defense, putting the ball where it needs to be. I'll tell you, the Saints over the past few years remind me of those Chargers teams back in the 80s with, Kellen Winslow and Charlie Joyner and Wes Chandler. And those guys would score 65 points and then they'd lose, 66 to 65, So, so defensively, we just have to be able to stop some people and let the offense do their thing.
Yeah, the old San Diego Superchargers. Yeah,
yeah.
That was some good teams back then. Air Coryell. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, and Quinn, I want to ask you something different, other than just about the team. This past week, they honored Tom Benson. Did you have any type of relationship and have an opportunity to chat up or meet with Mr. Benson when he was the owner?
I did. Back when I played, he lived downtown there, and when it would rain, we didn't have that facility that they have now. So we were in Metairie right there, and when it rained, we would go down to the Superdome and practice. And Mr. Benson would often come to those practices, and there were a couple of times when he pulled me to the side and we chatted, and he would ask how my family's doing and how am I enjoying the city, and and he didn't have to do that, and I thought that was a great thing, and I think that he was very well respected and revered owner, and he cared about his team. And that's the difference. There are teams in this league that the owners, it's business first, and they really don't care about the players and what happens there. It's all about the dollar, and then you look at teams like, the New England Patriots, the Denver Broncos, the Saints, who really care about their players and take care of their players, because then what happens is the players know, okay, this is my football family. I'm going to do everything that I can. I'm going to kill myself for my football family. And that's when a team is cohesive and then they go places. When you have an owner who really doesn't care, then it becomes a bunch of mercenaries out there. Then all the players are going, well, I don't care about the team, but I'm going to do my thing and make sure that, I get mine, but they really don't have the team first in mind. So I think that's what Mr. Benson brought to the table, and it's very sad that he passed away, and he was a great owner, and I'm sorry he's not around anymore. He's definitely missed.
Awesome.
And wow, and those were some powerful things you said about Mr. Benson, and we've heard other players and former players echo the same thing. And the Saints players have always felt like, to me anyway, like they've had a very close-knit relationship with their fan base. And you said, you mentioned the word family a couple different times. You were fortunate in both sides of the spectrum that you just mentioned, because the Chargers, at least San Diego Chargers in those days, were known more for the mercenary approach, like you mentioned. Then you came to New Orleans, and you finished your career in Buffalo, and you hear a lot of people talk about how close knit the Bills organization and their community is as well, especially through those '90s where you played.
Yeah, especially with Mr. Wilson, who passed away a few years ago, that owned Bills. He had the same mentality as Mr. Benson. He would come in the locker room before the games, and he knew all the players, and he would shake your hand, and he would go around and talk to everybody, and he loved his team. And it was the same thing with New Orleans, where the Chargers again was more of an every man for himself scenario, and it's still kind of that way here, or here, not here anymore. They moved to LA. It's still kind of that way, and it really shows once they're out on the field. But yeah, Mr. Benson was great. And I'll tell you, those years after the 95 season, I really wanted to stay. I was an older player. I was already, into my 33, 34. And, football is like dog years, right? Once you turn 30, you might as well be, 70. And, and I knew that was going to be my last big contract before I retired. And, things just didn't work out, and I hated to go, man, because I sure loved and still love that city. Boy, I wanted to stay. But, things happen. That's a business like anything else. And but I got to tell you, man, Mr. Benson was one of a kind. He's definitely missed.
Good.
Does that kind of thing that you talk about, does that kind of thing reverberate through the players' community from team to team? Do players talk about that, and how big a difference does that sort of ownership make when it comes to free agency time?
I think more than anything, it's felt. You know what I mean? I think as a player, you feel it and you see it, but it's kind of an unspoken type of thing. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to badmouth your organization. You don't want to badmouth, your team. So it's more of like, oh, man, they do it like that here? Oh, they really don't care about you? Okay. You have to reevaluate. Am I going to play for the team, or am I going to play for myself and make sure that I can, extend my career and make sure that I'm around? So I think, it's like what they say, right? Like crap rolls downhill, right? It's that kind of thing. So when you have, it starts with the owner, goes down to the management, to the coaches, and now everybody's, just playing for their career when you don't have an owner who really, really embraces and cares about the team. So I think it's just felt by everybody. When your owner absolutely loves, he has tears in his eyes and he just wants the team to excel. And, you're like, wow, man, they really care here. They really love their organization. They really love the team. So I think, nothing really ever has to be said. You can feel it.
Nice.
Good
Now
stuff.
this Saints team currently, very young. We've touched on it a bunch of times, not only on this show, but throughout the community. Most of their prime players, outside of people like Drew or Cam that have been around for a few years, most of their prime players are second, third, maybe fourth year in the league. So it's a young nucleus that had a taste of success last year. But I think we can all agree that they took a real punch to the gut this past Sunday. Are they talented enough to turn it around quickly, and do you expect them to?
I think so. And unfortunately, in this day and age, right, everybody has a short attention span. When you're online, 3 clicks and I'm out of here. And, I think it's the same thing with, with football. Back when I was growing up, I'm not sure how old you guys are, but back when I was a kid, when you had those Pittsburgh Steelers teams and you had those Tom Landry teams with the Cowboys, and those players were on that team for 10 years, and those guys all lived together. And nowadays, everybody wants to win now. Even when you drafted your quarterback in the first round, he had 2 or 3 years to gel, and then they put him. Now they want him to play now, and he better win, and they want instant results. And sometimes it takes a minute for things to gel, especially when you have a young team. But I do think that they can turn it around quickly, and I think that it's going to be I feel like it's going to be a good season. I mean, I've been wrong before, but I think that they're going to do well. I think they're going to get healthy this week, and then hopefully they can keep that trend going.
Hey,
to answer your question, all three of us are around the same age, so we have pretty much the same mentality. I think that I'm the youngest of the three of us, and I just turned 46.
Right.
So yeah, I remember those Steeler teams, those early '80s Chargers teams. I was a fan of the Elway teams growing up, and like you said, it is heartening to see a player like a Drew Brees stay 13 years with the same organization and probably retire with them, because you don't see that very much anymore. So that's what's kind of neat about seeing this Saints team, because they're all growing up together right now.
Absolutely, and I have to tell you, I'm just going to change gears a little bit. I'm super proud of Drew. I knew Drew when he was here with San Diego, and he was a young player. We were friends. And, we would have conversations. And I watched how the Chargers treated him, and they didn't treat him very well. And it just really does my heart good to see him go. And it was a little bit of the same kind of thing, right? They didn't really treat me too well. And then I went to New Orleans, and things, worked out well for me there. So it's really amazing to watch him blossom into this future Hall of Fame player. And I'm super proud of him. And even more importantly, he's a quality person. Because, we're all only football players for a little bit,
right.
And you still have to go live life. And Drew is as quality a guy as there is. So I'm really proud of him.
Let me ask you this, man, because was it who was over that front office? Was it Beathard or?
Well, when I was in San Diego, at first it was
Spagnos.
No, it was God, I can't even remember his name. But anyway, so my second year, we were 6-10 my rookie year, and then Bobby Beathard came in, and for whatever reason, I was on the top of his get rid of list. And I was only 24 at the time, and I'd gotten hurt my second year. Came back towards the end of the season, and then the third year, I think they kind of wanted to get rid of me, but I had a great preseason. They had to keep me, but I didn't play much. And then they had put me on Plan B free agency. And for those of you that don't remember, they always had to designate 15 players they put on a list that were free to get picked up by other teams. Basically, them saying these are the last 15 guys. We really don't want them that much. And then they put me on that list and said, even if nobody picks you up, then we don't want you either. That kind of thing. So it was kind of a blessing. I ended up signing with the Saints, and things went great for me. Now, when Drew was here, it was actually John. I want to say, was it John Butler? No.
It was still Beathard, right?
I think it was John. Was it Beathard? I can't remember. I'm foggy. It was so years ago.
Yeah.
It was just years ago. But anyway, something happened. They drafted Phillip Rivers. They made the two of them compete for the starting job, and Drew won that competition and was the quarterback.
Right.
But if you remember, in the playoffs, the ball was fumbled. He reached out for it. Somebody fell on his elbow.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, that's it for him. They got rid of him quick. And he had a great season that year. They just really, I think did him a disservice, But sometimes when that happens, right, cream rises to the top. You get that chip on your shoulder, and it's the best thing that ever happened for him.
Yeah. You know, and you talked about from your mentioning the Wilson family and the Benson family and how you can tell as a player people cared and you didn't feel that same way in the Chargers. They've had that same feeling just going through their front office for many a year, right? And
you're talking about the Chargers?
The Chargers, right. And it's unfortunate because you look at a player like Phillip Rivers, and I'm surprised he's still with the team, to be honest with you. I thought they were going to get rid of him a long time ago, but he keeps having great years, right? So, but it's just so shocking how these teams, like some businesses, just don't get it. If you treat the employees well, they're going to do great things for you in return.
That's right. That's right. And I've, me living here in San Diego, I've watched just year after year them do that to players. I remember, when LaDainian Tomlinson, who's one of the all-time great Chargers, they had Lorenzo Neal, who was my teammate in New Orleans, lead blocking for him. Mm-hmm. And he would open the hole, and LaDainian Tomlinson, and he was carrying the ball 40 times a game. And he had these phenomenal seasons. Then he had a couple of, injury years, which in that league, people get injured, things happen. And during those years, they changed the offensive scheme around to be more of a passing offense. Mm-hmm. So that when LaDainian Tomlinson came back, now he was on, and then they had Darren Sproles. Now he's only getting 20 plays a game as opposed to 40, 45 snaps a game. Mm-hmm. And his stats weren't as good. And now people are saying, oh, he's not the same player. He's not the same player. He's not good enough. And then they just got rid of him. And I couldn't believe it. See, and the problem is, as a player, you can't really speak up and advocate for yourself because now you're a bad seed.
Right.
Right? He's got a bad attitude. It's that type of thing. So, but yeah, I've watched this, with the Chargers, and that's why they've had a struggles. I remember when Marty Schottenheimer was, I think, 11-5 one year, and then they got rid of him.
Yeah, sure did. Yeah, I remember that as well.
So things happen, and again, it's a business, and I don't mean to bash on them. It's just you could just tell the difference, as a player from organization.
Well, you're being kind, so I will do the bashing for you. Yes, terrible what they have done, but I'm glad Phillip is doing well. Just do not do well against the Saints, Phillip. That's all I'm saying. So
exactly.
Okay.
And listen, I root for those guys. I root for Phillip. Phillip is a great guy, and man, he's in his own right, just a phenomenal quarterback. He's done a lot for the community. A great player, and they've got some good players, So, and they stumbled. I think that they've got a lot of great players this year too, and I think they're going to do well this year. But they stumbled that first game as well. So, it just happens. Not everybody can win, but So.
Well, a friend of ours, a friend of mine and Kyle's, and certainly a friend of our show, and you'll be on their show next week. Alan Ulrich, he talks about how, and I remember this when I was little, the Saints traded away Chuck Muncie and Wes Chandler, both to San Diego.
Sure did.
But since then, the Charger imports that became great Saints, yourself, you mentioned Darren Sproles and obviously Drew. You know what? I'll take that trade-off. I'll take the three of you, and they can have their Wes Chandler and Chuck Muncie. We were definitely thankful you were a New Orleans Saints.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Those guys are great players too, but yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, no doubt. And I thank you again. I know we're running a little bit short on time. If you don't mind, tell everybody how they can find you and how they can find what you're doing with your book and all your work you do.
Well, you can follow me on Instagram at Quinn Early, or Twitter also at Quinn Early. And then my book, my mom's book, Bryant Acres, is at BryantAcres.com. You can order the book there, or you can go to Amazon and order the paperback, and also on Kindle. And the proceeds will go to Alzheimer's research. So everybody buy some books. And then also the Kindle book right now is only 99 cents. So if you buy like 10 of them, it's under $10, and then you can email gift them to your friends, and then that'll help us to get on the Amazon bestsellers list. So that's the goal also, while raising money for Alzheimer's research. So everybody do that. That would help out a lot.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I may do that. Let me ask you this before you get off the line. The Saints, and we talked a lot about those guys, but you do a lot of things out in California. Are there any special charities or foundations you're a part of there as well?
I am. So I'm a part of the Alzheimer's Association Imperial County chapter, and I'm going to be doing their walk, which is in Crown Point in San Diego on September 23rd. And if you also go to my Facebook page, which is Quinn R. Early, I've been raising money for the walk, and I've raised just a little over $7,000 for the Alzheimer's Association. Wow. And if you would like to donate, you could click on that link. And I'm also, in the next couple of days, I'm going to be posting again. You can donate. And my goal is to raise $10,000 for Alzheimer's research for them. And it's been going great. And it's just a blessing, and this has become my passion. So I'm going to do that here, and then I'm going to come to New Orleans, and I'm going to try to set something up. And my goal for 2019 is to do the Alzheimer's Walk in as many cities as possible.
Awesome. Well, hey, Quinn, I tried to connect with you. They said you have too many friends, so you got to get rid of one, get me on board.
I will. I'll do that right when we get off the phone, man. Get in there. Let's go.
Right. Just don't be dumping me to do it, okay?
Yeah.
Please?
All right. I promise.
Hey, and I was able to post your book on our Bayou Blitz page, so fans, you guys can be able to take a look at that on our page as well as on Saints News Network.com. I'm going to put that on there as well. Hey, it's been a great show. Thank you so much, Quinn.
Yeah, thanks for having me, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Oh,
I'm gonna go ahead.
I apologize. I was going to say I was a big fan of you as a player. I'm happy to get to know you a little bit through social media. You've been a great guest to us tonight too.
Definitely.
I think very, very impressive person and a great guy. I thank you so much for taking your time tonight.
Absolutely. Thanks, you guys, for having me. And I'm going to clean out a couple of friends so that I can make room for you, for you. And yeah, invite me on again anytime. I'd love to chat. Love chatting with you.
Okay, and let us know if you're doing anything in the movies that we need to be aware of as well. Okay.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. I will for sure. And everybody can go to my IMDb page too, and you can see the movies that I've been in. So
awesome.
Oh, great.
All right. Thank you. That's Quinn Early,
appreciate it.
Former Saints wide receiver, joining us on the Bayou Blitz. Bob, great show, man. But before you and I get off, I need to ask you, and I put that out there earlier about Craig Robertson. Man, what?
Yeah.
What's the deal? I mean, not one snap?
Yeah. I usually wait. John Hendricks of Canal Street Chronicles does a great job after pretty much every game posting the snap counts. And when I saw that Craig didn't get a single defensive snap, my jaw just kind of dropped because it's not like, that entire defense played poorly. But that linebacking core struggled, as we were worried that they would. DeMario Davis had a couple decent stops in the second half. A.J. Klein had one stop in the backfield that came to mind. But again, all game long, they looked like they were a step behind or out of position. And Craig Robertson, I don't get it either. Quinn raised some question marks that I think is worth taking a look into. Maybe they don't like what he's doing in practice as much as the other guys. But we know that he's a sound technician. Craig knows what he's doing on the football field, and he can athletically match up against backs coming out of the backfield or tight ends coming off of the line of scrimmage. And in my opinion, we can't say the same thing about A.J. Klein or certainly Manti Te'o. So I would love to hear why Craig isn't a bigger part of the defensive game plan. It'll be interesting to see what they do with these linebackers this week against Cleveland.
Look, I usually don't complain about a guy not being on the field, but not to have one snap, and it makes you just wonder. I'm say this too, and Saints fans, please don't take this the wrong way that Kyle's being anti-Saints and what have you. I'm not. But what I am going to say is when something doesn't make sense, this just does not make any sense whatsoever. And I think Mike Nolan is great. You hear me, Saints fans. I think he's a great coach. I think Dennis Allen is a very good coach. But I'm starting to wonder if there's some personality issues that is going on behind the scenes, man. Because you can't tell me a guy like Craig Robertson's with what he has contributed to the Saints defense for the past couple of years, somebody's not trying to make a point somewhere. That's all I'm saying. And if that's the case, let's get it corrected, air out the differences, and put the man on the field against Cleveland. We need him. Trust me, because Tyrod, as they would say, Tyrod is going to be sneaking out that backfield. And one last thing, Bob, I would not be too surprised, Saints fans, if things get a little out of hand that we see Baker Mayfield.
I think it's an absolute possibility. I mean, look, Cleveland fans, many of them are taking last week's result, which was a tie against the Pittsburgh Steelers, as a win. Which I suppose if you've won one of your last 32 games, including going 0-16 last year, I suppose I could see taking a tie as a victory, especially against such a bitter rival. But Tyrod, he went 15 for 40 passing. And, I mean, he's never been the most accurate passer in the world. He's not going to scare a defense with his arm. He will do it with his legs. And something that you just alluded to, Kyle, Tyrod can be very dangerous on quarterback scrambles and on the move. So I'll be interested to see how the Saints defense handles that. But Baker Mayfield was drafted number 1, and he was drafted number 1 to play. Like Quinn just said, this is an era of football where teams can no longer afford to make a high draft choice season for 2 to 3 years. They expect him to play now, and really it doesn't have anything to do with money. It has to do with coaches' job security and the way these contracts are worked. By the time your guy if your guy doesn't get on the field or plays up to his peak level for 3 or 4 years, you have him for 1 year of peak performance before a contract ends. So they need to see what he can do. And Cleveland wasn't projected to go much of anywhere this year. So you got to believe that Coach Hugh Jackson and that organization will want to see the number 1 draft choice on the field to grow with some of that young talent that they brought in, to see if they finally have a franchise quarterback. So you're right. If the Saints get up on them early, would not surprise me in the least if we saw Baker get his first regular season action as a rookie. That'll be one of the questions. But hey, we also saw the way Tampa Bay came out gunning against that Saints defense, which I think shocked us all. I'm still in a little bit of shock over it. So my first point of concern will be, how is New Orleans going to open up this game, both offensively and defensively, but particularly on the defensive side?
Well, I could tell you this, man, and I watched the Hard Knocks episodes very carefully, and every time Baker Mayfield got into the game, he added energy. And I said this when they were going through the draft process. This kid is a winner. Hugh Jackson, if you see how he responds to Baker Mayfield, even though Tyrod is his number 1 guy for right now, he loves that kid. Okay? And the players love him. That's their future. But I'm just saying, Tyrod cannot have another 15 for 40 type of game. And when they had put themselves in position to even win. I know they came back for 14 points in the fourth quarter, but they had a position themselves to win that game. And I know the kicker missed, so be it. But still, they could have converted on a third down or two. That's another thing, right? But still, he ran for 70 yards?
Yep.
That's what
he was their leading rusher.
Right. That's what the Saints are going to have to be aware of. And get this, whether you like it or not, Baker Mayfield can do the same thing. And if he has a better arm than Tyrod, he's more accurate, and he brings the energy and the passion. And if they need that spark, I would not be surprised if Hugh Jackson puts him into the game. I'm just saying it like that. And guys, Myles Jarrett, he's for real.
Yeah.
Look, man, to Mr. Armstead, you got your hands full, and I think he's going to do well against him, but that kid is for real.
Yeah, he really is. And they have a couple decent edge rushers on the other side too.
Yeah.
With Emmanuel Ogba, and I always pronounce his name wrong, so I apologize. And Jamie Collins. The Browns' other first-round draft choice this year, Denzel Ward, the cornerback, played very well against the Steelers receivers as well.
Oh, he came back.
So I'll be
I know he was injured.
To see how he plays against Ginn and Thomas and those Saints wide receivers as well.
Okay, that's good to know because I know he was injured either their first or second preseason game, so he came back and played pretty well. Look, man, the Browns shouldn't be taken lightly. That's a good defense there. You know, Greg Williams is wanting to exact some revenge, especially from what Sean Payton did to him a couple of years ago when the L.A. Rams came into, they were, St. Louis then? The Rams.
The Rams.
Came into the Superdome, and we put up, 50 burger on those boys, right? So, I mean, he's going to come after Drew. And we're just going to have to expect this is going to be one of those hard-fought games. If the Saints are going to prevail, they've got to be able to hang on to the ball, execute the offense well as the defense has to be able to make some plays. We need a playmaker, Bob. We absolutely need a playmaker, and we need somebody out there who's going to get into those guys' butts. Excuse me, I'm saying it. Get into their butts and light some fires, man. If that's Cam Jordan, if you're the leader, you need to do it. Somebody needs to do this.
Yeah, and as well as I do, Cam was hot. Cam was red hot after that loss, and he was vowing that performance was absolutely unacceptable, and that the Saints defense will not let it happen again. And I believe the man. We all know what a competitor he is, and we know that the Saints still have a lot of talent on that defensive side of the ball. I would be absolutely shocked if they laid another egg like they did this past game. And hey, Quinn just said everybody is entitled to a bad game. Unfortunately for our Saints, the entire defense picked the same day to have a bad game, and it wasn't necessarily a good game plan either. Quinn alluded to it, and you and I almost instantly agreed with him that we were shocked at how laid back the defensive scheme was coming out of the locker room. I don't expect that this time around. I do expect a different approach. They have to be wary of Tyrod Taylor's scrambles. And I do think that we'll see Craig Robertson, on the field because when the Saints have played mobile quarterbacks in the past, they've always employed one of their linebackers as what's called a spy. For those of you that don't know, that's where there's one defender assigned directly to the quarterback on every passing play, and he kind of shadows that quarterback's movements. And if that quarterback breaks containment or breaks outside of the pocket, and it's usually a linebacker, the backer goes and gets him. When the Saints have employed that kind of defensive strategy before, it's always been Robertson that's been the spy. So it would not surprise me if we saw Craig on the field more this time. but we have to get pressure up front.
Well, he should have been the spy against. He should have been the spy against Fitzpatrick. 3rd and 11. All I'm saying is somebody. Where were you, defensive coaches? And Aaron Glenn, I love you, but somebody should have said, you know what? This guy has been picking up yardage against us all game long. Why wouldn't somebody be a spy or have contained? That's all. I mean, this is football, and you've got to be thinking about those things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no question.
Sorry, I'm ranting right now, man.
I think we all are, and we're mad because we're shocked. You know, we did not expect this kind of performance, especially against the Tampa Bay offense. Look, we respected. We all knew how dangerous they were at wide receiver and even at tight end. And wow, those guys did not disappoint us for sure. We did not expect the kind of game that we got from Fitzpatrick. And let's face it, we didn't expect Tampa Bay to be able to run the ball as effectively as they did either. And that kept the Saints defenders further back on their heels because that opened up a play-action attack.
Right.
And, Cleveland comes in with the same sort of offense, really. They have wonderful weapons, wide out with Gordon and Jarvis Landry. They have a terrific tight end, an athletic tight end that normally gives the Saints problems, David Njoku. But they have sort of a so-so running game and a very suspect offensive line. New Orleans needs to shut down that running game immediately, make Cleveland one-dimensional, make Tyrod beat you with his arm, which I promise you he's not going to do. Cleveland gave up 7 sacks against the Steelers, and 5 of the 7 were from the edge positions. So that bodes well for Cam Jordan, Marcus Davenport, Alex Okafor, and if we see Trey Hendrickson. But those guys need to make the plays. We know that they can. They just need to do it. It was shocking and disappointing that we didn't see much disruption from the interior either. Rankins, Onyemata, Tyler Davison, they were quiet all game long unless they were getting a penalty flag thrown against them.
Yeah, and you have to be careful with these penalties against the quarterback. You can't lay your whole weight. And I'm just trying to figure out, how does a 300-pound guy stop his weight from getting down on the person he's tackling? I'm still trying to figure this out. And I know everybody's trying to protect the quarterback, protect the franchise, limit the injuries. But I'm just thinking something is got to give. They're going to have some flexibility. And I think they had over, 15 personal fouls called because of roughing the passer in the NFL this past weekend. That's the most ever in one weekend for defensive players to get penalized with hitting the quarterback. So, I mean, I know they're trying to change some things, but I just wonder if it's overkill. Yeah, that's the best way to say it, if it's overkill.
And you've known me for a while, so you know that I personally think it is overkill, massive overkill. I thought the referees did a lousy job, throughout the league and then specifically in the Saints-Buccaneers game. But I also, I saw you doing the same thing through social media. We were also quick to point out to different Saints fans, look, the referees were not the reason why New Orleans lost that football game. It wasn't even close. But what worries me is if the officiating doesn't clean up and at least get more consistent, it worries me that it could cost the Saints a game. And you don't want to see officiating be the final result of any competition.
Right.
And that's what a league-wide problem is. That I'm with you, Kyle. I hope they clean it up.
Yeah. And one last thing, man. I've been saying this for the past 3 years. Well, 2 years. Michael Thomas he keeps holding that ball out and about. Yeah. I saw it was going to happen eventually, and it did occur. He's got to hold that ball a little bit tighter, man. He's got to do it. And we saw this early on in Marcus Colston's career as well. You've got to hold the ball tighter as a wide receiver because those linebackers or safeties will be coming behind you to be able to knock that ball out. And guess what? Cleveland is that type of aggressive team as well. The running backs as well. You've guys got to hold on to the ball. Gillislee, I really couldn't understand that fumble because he had two hands on the ball and it still popped out.
Well, and I didn't realize this until I'd seen a couple people mention it. He had a history of ball security issues with New England, probably the reason that he was available on the waiver wire in the first place.
Right.
But, we also know Sean Payton. Gillislee does that too many more times. He's not going to be in a New Orleans Saints uniform. But I would like to see them establish the running game from someone early on, whether it's Kamara, whether they give Gillislee another shot or promote Boston Scott. I don't care who it is. I would just like to see a little bit more balanced attack early on.
Here's the problem. Everybody knows, and this is what Tampa Bay knew as well. If Jonathan Williams is in the backfield, what's going to happen? A run. Everybody knows Gillislee, if he's in the backfield, what's going to happen? A run. So that's why if they would have kept Shane Vereen, maybe, and I know he's a change of pace type of back like Kamara, but it gives you that, it catches them off guard if it's a run pass fake, fake. So, I mean, the thing is, man, the professor used to always say this: the Saints have a propensity and proclivity to be one-dimensional as well as predictable. So we can't be predictable, and that's why Kamara is so effective, because you don't know. Is he going to run? Is he going to catch the ball out the backfield? Mark Ingram, is he going to run? He can catch the ball out the backfield, right? So that's the versatility in the offense that we have. If we have a running back there, we know that what we're going to get. But I'm telling you guys, if they shut down the run again against Williams as well as Gillislee, it's because of the predictability. Yeah. And again, we threw out a fact that might bode well for the Saints edge rushers against Cleveland based off last week's Pittsburgh game. I'll throw this fact out on the other side of the ball. The Steelers are still without Le'Veon Bell, one of the better running backs in the league. But despite that, James Conner had really controlled the running game. I think he had close to 150 yards rushing. James Conner, he's a nice back, but you can't. I don't think you can look around at all 32 teams in the NFL and say James Conner would start for them for any more than a couple of teams. So that bodes well. We know that the Saints have a still talented offensive line, although it's a question mark whether Pete is going to suit up for this one. They still did pretty well without him. Look,
I'm like you. I would like, we know Kamara can do it. I would like to see him get some more touches in the run game.
Right. Conner was a little bit like how Kamara is, because he had 135 yards rushing on 31 attempts, and he had 57 yards in receiving. So he was an all-purpose back. So maybe they're going to have trouble with the all-purpose back like Kamara is again. And we have to applaud him because he had 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. I mean, he had a wonderful game as a receiver. He had a beautiful touchdown run and a beautiful 2-point conversion too, where he really showed his ability. Look, he can run between the tackles.
Right.
He might not be that fourth and 1/4 in inches type of bruiser, but he could pick up yardage between the tackles for you, especially if you have a talented offensive line in front of you like he does that can open the holes. So I understand why the Saints came out the way that they did, and I actually kind of expected them to be extremely aggressive through the air. I think what Coach Payton was trying to do, was expecting to do, was build a big lead and then establish the running game. But because of such a poor defensive performance, that was never able to happen.
Right. Yeah, well, I'll tell you one thing, man. It's difficult at any time to really have true balance And when you're able to establish some sort of balance in the National Football League, you're doing a great job. But the defense has to play a better job. The cornerbacks, I can't completely fault them because there was no pressure for Fitzpatrick to be concerned with, So I did see Davenport a couple of times kind of get there, and as well as Cam a couple of times, but the interior guys were very disappointing, man. Amniata was very disappointing, so
yeah, they were.
I don't know. Do you think we need to get bigger there, man? Do you think we need to get Stallworth in there? What's your thoughts there?
Well, I mean, Stallworth was certainly impressive in the preseason, and certainly showed potential. And he even played well in a couple opportunities he got against the opposition's number 1 and number 2 offenses. So I'd like to see what Taylor Stallworth can do in there. But listen, Sheldon Rankins was a number 1 pick. David Onyemata was drafted that same year as Sheldon. I think it was 2016 as a 3rd and 4th rounder, and he had looked like he was progressing into an interior disruptor. Just needed to be more consistent. So you need those 2 guys to do it. You do. If you need to turn to a Tyler Davison, who is a great run defender, but not as much, doesn't give you nearly as much in the pass rush, or you need to turn to a Taylor Stallworth, or maybe you need to go to the Saints love to call it their NASCAR package, where they bring in more speed guys on the outside and even move Cam, or we saw it a little bit with Alex Okafor inside. If you need to do that, I'm all for it if it puts pressure on the passer, but you need to stop the run too.
Yeah, I think there was one time I did see Davenport on the inside.
And I can see that. I mean, he's a big, strong guy. Like you said, I noticed that he did have some nice pressures, as the game wore on. So I don't think I don't think anybody needs to wave the white flag and throw in the towel on the Saints defense yet. They need to go back to the drawing board. And I don't know where it starts. I mean, you brought up a great point about the Tampa receivers being able to get open because of a lack of a pass rush. But those Tampa receivers were getting open fast too. I mean, Fitzpatrick was basically taking 3 steps and firing the ball downfield. And Jackson, Godwin, and Mike Evans had already gotten a step or 2 on Patrick Robinson or Lattimore or Crawley. So they were getting open fast. It would have been difficult for edge rushers to really get there and make an impact. Yeah. But you hit the nail on the head when you said you need an interior push at that point, and we didn't get it this past Sunday.
Yeah. Look, guys, it was coaching. And I said it. Yes, that's right. I said it. And I always get in trouble with the team, so that's okay. It was a coaching issue. And I think Dennis Allen is going to be a little bit more aggressive, and I believe that we're going to see more aggression. Even the blitzes weren't working, So, guys, we just going to defensive backfield, communicate better. Lattimore, it was humbling. That's why I titled this "Humble Them Right." They said prove them right. No, humble them right. And because I saw a lot of cussing from Crowley and Lattimore during the preseason, a lot of vibrato with "I'm the best" and "this is the best" and this. Look, guys, this is the National Football League, and that professional that's going to line up across from you wants to win just like you.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, Bob, man, tell people how they can find you on social media as well as the web.
Well, Kyle, you and I are everywhere. I can be found on Twitter at BobbyR2613 and also on Facebook under Bob Rose. As most of you know, I do write through the Canal Street Chronicles, so those articles are available not only on my personal page, but Canal Street Chronicles on Facebook and at Saint CSC on Twitter. And as we mentioned a couple of times tonight, we have a rapidly growing and really, really fun Facebook group, the Bayou Blitz. I think we're up to almost 900 people now, 900
Woo-hoo!
followers.
All right.
And it's really exciting because so many of them are extremely interactive, not only throughout our group, but throughout the rest of the Saints discussion groups on Facebook. So yeah, track, if you haven't already, track Kyle or myself down. Also available always through the Saints News Network. I think we're both pretty engaging. We like to get people involved, and we want you involved not only through our group, but through our show as well.
Definitely. And don't forget, you can be able to read Bob where?
Through the Canal Street Chronicles, and obviously the Bayou Blitz. I just put out a preview piece today, this afternoon, a couple hours before the show, about Saints offense versus Browns defense. I'm going to follow that up with, obviously, the Saints offensive matchups versus Cleveland's defense. Usually do about 4 pieces a week for John Hendricks and Canal Street. Having a ton of fun doing that as well as this show.
Definitely. And guys, don't forget, you can follow us also at www.saintsnewsnetwork.com, where you can read all Barry Hurst's featured articles, as well as we have a couple other new writers that we have brought into the fold. And you can also check us out at Saints News on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. All right, Bob, it's been a great week. I'm glad you had a chance to get a little vacation, you and the family, so it's back to the grind.
Yes.
Back to the grind, man. And Saints fans, look, stay off the Crescent City connection right now. The NLPD is having enough problems as it is. We're going to be fine. Saints are going to be fine. Just be there to support our boys in the black and gold on Sunday afternoon versus the Cleveland Browns. This is Kyle T. Mosley of the Saints News Network, featuring the Bayou Blitz and host Mr. Bob Rose. Bob, let's have a great week, my bud.
You too, my friend.
All right. Take care, family. Y'all take care. Bye.